Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Remember, subscribe is the vibe. I'm your host, Gabos. Your boy's on the road to 10K. Humbly. The like button is like, the subscribe button is earned. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the most brutal crashes in F1 history. I'm gonna be honest, this video was actually suggested by one of my subscribers that I react to F1, I guess motorsport races. Like, my IQ when it comes to this sport is, I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not one of those people that act like they know it all. My IQ when it comes to this sport is literally zero. I am borderline brain dead in terms of understanding what goes on in this sport. For those of you guys that follow me, y'all know I'm a man of the people. I love reacting to new stuff, and honestly, I've taken a liking to a lot of sports that I'm unfamiliar with, because why not? Like, you have a YouTube channel, right? Might as well learn something. So we have, and leave it to me to be toxic, right? Because the first time I'm reacting to F1, it so happens to be the most brutal crashes. But in the wise words of one of my favorite rappers, Russ, smooth rides aren't as fun to watch as train wrecks. You know what I'm saying? We enjoy brutal crashes, we enjoy knockouts. So I'm just keeping it true to myself. So we're gonna react to the most brutal crashes in F1 history.
Hamilton's devastating crash to Verstappen's dramatic incident, which even destroyed a F1 driver's career. These are the terrible crashes that changed F1 forever.
Together. An absolutely smeared championship protagonist.
So F1 is different from like
And we gotta
NASCAR.
start with Fernando Alonso. In 2016,
So I thought F1 was NASCAR. So I'm guessing F1 is its own entity, it's its own league, because the cars don't look the same.
Alonso crashed badly as he went flying against a wall in the Australian Grand Prix.
Oh, shit.
He went flipping through the air before coming to rest upside down at 200 miles per hour. Luckily, he wasn't seriously injured and was capable of escaping his McLaren. But trust me, guys, that's nothing. Because what?
To go 200 miles an hour and he comes out this vehicle alive? He said 200 miles an hour.
Max's father, Jos Verstappen, suffered from was one of the most infamous fire incidents in F1 history. At the 1994 Hockenheim race, Jos came to the pits after 15 laps, hoping for a regular pit stop, but instead, he experienced the shock of his life. Fuel got sprayed out of the fueling hose and ignited his hot car. This became a huge disaster, as Verstappen in his car and his surroundings caught fire. Everything went up into flames, and it was suddenly dark and black, and I couldn't breathe. And despite this disaster, pit stop refueling still remained in F1 till 2010. But eventually, after several more incidents occurred due to refueling, it got banned for good. But even though Jos survived his fiery crash, another driver couldn't, which
crazy.
not only made headlines, but also became one of the worst moments in F1's history.
Damn.
In 1994, the crash at the San Marino GP changed F1 forever. Roland Ratzenberger, an Austrian driver who had competed in just 3 F1 races, crashed his car into a wall at 195.7 miles per hour during qualifying, resulting in his loss. But unfortunately, that wasn't all. Ayrton Senna, one of the best F1 drivers in history, crashed and passed away the next day due to one of the most horrifying crashes in F1 history.
So we have a sport where where there was a moment where athletes died back to back. Are they athletes or are they drivers? Like, it's always kind of been a blurry line. Like, I'm gonna treat it as a sport, right? Because it requires some type of skill. So I'm gonna call it a sport. But you have back to back moments, days when your drivers are dying and this sport is still a thing. 190 miles an hour is crazy. This is how fast these guys are going? 190 miles an hour. I'm thinking you're going back to the future, bro.
There are even rumors that the Brazilian was considering not competing in the Grand Prix because he was so devastated by Ratzenberger's passing. Sadly, Senna made the decision to race, and on lap 7, he lost control of his vehicle and hit an exposed concrete barrier at a speed of about 192 miles per hour. This incident created a great deal of changes in F1, with more emphasis being placed on the safety of F1 drivers. To minimize dangerous detachments and crashes, testing methods for tire barriers were made mandatory. Barriers were secured by rubber belts, and wheel tethers were adopted. But
That's the one shit I hate about life. Yeah, you're not gonna use me as a casualty of war. Don't wait till I die for y'all to want to make repairs and adjustments, okay? Like, you know what I'm saying? Back-to-back times, someone died, and y'all still didn't make the proper necessary changes to prevent it from happening again until it happened 24 hours later. And then when it happened to two folks, all of a sudden we're making some adjustments to okay. I'm not no one's sacrificial lamb, bro. Like, we get one shot at life. This is crazy. 190 miles an hour and you smack dead into a wall? Holy.
Well, these terrible crashes changed F1.
I didn't know it was that
crashes
bad.
also crushed one F1 driver's reputation. And we all know which Russian driver I'm talking about. Nikita Mazepin's rookie season made some big headlines, but not for any good reasons. He was a laughingstock. Even before his career got started, he was already being judged. And when he crashed in the first race of the year, obviously it didn't help him. But seriously, guys, crash in the first race? I mean, come on. Even Sergio Perez repeatedly called him an idiot at the Portuguese Grand Prix. Also, his relationship with ex-teammate Mick Schumacher also deteriorated. And to the point where Mick even declared that he wanted to finish him. Oh boy, that got serious. But while this Haas driver's crashes were simply ridiculous, another Haas driver was also involved in a crash,
That
which
gotta
not only
cost
changed
mad
his life,
bread.
but also
I'm not gonna
changed
hold you. Crashing these cars gotta cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, bro. These cars do not. First of all, any car that could top the speeds of 180 miles an hour gotta cost. Are these not $1 million vehicles? Hundreds of thousands, I would assume. You know what I mean?
One forever. During the opening lap of the 2018 Bahrain Grand Prix, Romain Grosjean was involved in a
Look at his hand.
terrifying crash. He reached a peak force of 67 Gs when he crashed into a metal barrier at 119 miles per hour. This split his car into half and caused an explosion. Grosjean was trapped in the cockpit for 27 seconds before he managed to escape through the raging fire.
Wow.
But later, he revealed that the main reason he's alive is because of the halo, which definitely has become a huge part of F1 safety. But despite the safety precautions,
What's
some
the halo?
crashes were simply unavoidable,
halo?
especially when it looked like a driver would do anything to harm their teammates' chances of winning. And we're of course talking about Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg. Despite winning both Constructors and Drivers' Championships, things got personal for the Mercedes drivers, especially at the height of it. When the pair took out each other on the opening lap at the Spanish Grand Prix,
It be your
the
old
crash
homeboys.
was so bad that it not only fractured their already tense relationship, but also had Mercedes threaten to sack both drivers. But what's interesting is the pair were actually childhood friends, and even after that, their friendship suffered and got ruined to the point where Lewis even told Mercedes that he didn't want to race for them again. Niki Lauda also stressed that both drivers pushed each other to the limit, hence the crash. But turns out, this crash was nothing compared to the crash that Niki experienced during his racing days, which was so devastating that it forced F1 to make changes. It was 1976, German Grand Prix. Bad weather and track coverage meant that parts of the Nürburgring circuit were wet. Now, what's interesting is, even though Lauda was the fastest driver on the circuit, he still expressed his displeasure with the track and asked his fellow drivers to abandon the race. But unfortunately, he was outvoted, and as such, the race went ahead. And sadly, at the notoriously dangerous Bergwerk corner, he lost control of his Ferrari, veered off the track, collided with a wall, and his car burst into flames. The Austrian driver suffered severe burns to his head, hands, and inhaled hot fumes that damaged his lungs. And after being taken to the hospital, he fell into a coma and was even given his last rites. But he survived, thank God. But while Niki Lauda's crash became a defining moment in his career, Nicholas Latifi's crashes were also pretty much defining, but not in the way he wanted. In the final laps of the 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, Latifi ruined it for Mercedes. Hamilton saw his lead cut after Latifi crashed into the barriers. But as apologetic as Latifi was about the incident, he did little to change his Latifi status, as he also crashed behind a safety car at the Monaco Grand Prix. Behind a safety car. I mean, come on. How does that even happen? Well, this is what Latifi said. The throttle didn't get stuck, but it was like the throttle got stuck. It was very strange and surprising at the same time, and I was already going so slow there, I was just a passenger at that point. The car is driving forward and I'm not on the gas, so I don't know what's happening here. Well, now that's one way to put it. But remarkably, that wasn't all. During the Japanese Grand Prix practice session, he got lost and turned down a dead end. And instead of continuing down the track layout, he made a 180-degree turn and went the wrong way. This
Bruh.
obviously didn't go unnoticed, but instead of owning up, once again, he blamed the incident on the car being strange. Go Tiffy, go Tiffy. What a guy. But while
What's
the
he talking
Tiffy's
about?
crashes luckily didn't cause any serious harm, unfortunately we can't say the same thing for Antoine Hubert, because as we all know, the crash he was involved in was simply devastating. In the Belgian
We don't
Grand
all know
Prix,
that.
the F2 driver was
I would know
involved
this
in a
man.
high-speed crash. On the second lap, Hubert collided into a barrier near the high-speed Eau Rouge turn and was then struck by another driver, Juan Manuel Correa, which caused Hubert's car to be completely destroyed. Antoine later succumbed to his injuries and thus couldn't survive. But sadly, that's not all, because Formula One racing icon Jackie Stewart also experienced a similar incident at the same corner. Stewart was left facing his end when he crashed his car at the Spa circuit, which left him hanging upside down with fuel trickling down his face. He was safely rescued from his automobile by 2 other drivers, and since then, he's led multiple campaigns to increase drivers' safety. But surprisingly, his initial thoughts were that seatbelts were unnecessary and uncomfortable. But since then, he's changed his mind after these many new safety measures prevented from losing many drivers. When I was starting in the Formula One world, the tracks were hideously dangerous. There were no runoff areas, and it was just crazy. Ridiculous things like telegraph poles were up close and personal. But
And this is what I say, bro. And this is why I respect GOATs of any sport, whether, like, you know what I mean? Like, I just respect GOATs because whenever you look back to any sport, you realize that, like, especially when it comes to, like, football, like, the protection wasn't what it is today, man. Today, we got kids in college playing with air-conditioned helmets. You know what I mean? And it's not to go off a track, but I respect the GOATs because you got to think, when these guys are playing these sports in the 1960s, 1970s, they don't have half the resources that the players that are playing today got, or the drivers driving today got. Like, we got, you know what I mean? We strapped up, man. Like, safety precautions are at an all-time high. No sport is not trying to have any athlete die. You know what I'm saying? A couple of months back, a football player by the name of Damar Hamlin had a cardiac arrest after he got I think it was like a helmet to the chest. That literally, the force was so powerful that stopped his heart, and trainers were able to run on the field within seconds and somehow bring this man back to life. He died on the field, though. He died on the field. You know, and I think back to, like, yo, if this dude was playing in the 70s and 80s, he's done. He done. Because the resources, the medicine, the doctors, the physicians, the research is just not the same. And oftentimes, the athletes, the drivers today, like bro, we benefit off of social times. We benefit off of today's technology, where a lot of guys back in the day, I'm like, yo, bro, they would have died. They would have died. And I respect the GOATs of any sport for going through whatever they went through at those times. Even though the numbers and the stats aren't the same because everything seems inflated nowadays, and I'm not sure how it works in F1, but you got to respect the people that were playing these sports and the drivers that were driving these cars at 190 miles an hour without the resources that we have today, bro. That's crazy. Like, you're almost like a daredevil in a sense, huh?
while Stewart already changed his views about seatbelts, Carlos Sainz's crash still forced the FIA to dig deeper regarding its seatbelt rule. During the second practice at the Monza circuit, Carlos Sainz crashed hard into the wall at the Ascari chicane. The impact was so heavy that Sainz was pushed pretty far forward towards his steering wheel, despite having his seatbelt on. F1 fans got extremely alarmed by this, but the FIA still noted that while Sainz's case was strange, it's normal for seatbelts to give a little impact, because doing so is far safer for the human body than when they are rigid. Even Michael Massey said, "I think the seatbelts are made to stretch. We will look at the seatbelt, as we do with any major incident or significant incident like this, and see what we can learn from it." But even though this crash created FIA ways to improve the sport, another crash created dispute among Red Bull's teammates, which even led to one of them leaving the racing team. At the 2018 Azerbaijan Grand Prix, both Red Bull drivers, Max Verstappen and Daniel Ricciardo, crashed into each other while battling on the long straight. Both of them seemed to move under braking. Verstappen defended too hard and Ricciardo attacked too aggressively, thereby resulting in a double DNF. After the race, Ricciardo even said that Verstappen's cutting into him annoyed him, and his frustration increased when he realized that the team wouldn't help him. "We touched wheels a few times where it was always Max coming into me, as opposed to me going into Max. Part of me was waiting for the team to say cut the but never really got that.
Bro.
I'll say now, I was more just like, F you guys. Wow, I never saw Ricciardo angry before, but Ricciardo later explained that this Baku incident eventually made him leave the Milton Keynes-based team, since Verstappen was just ready to end his career. Even the team boss, Christian Horner, believes that Ricciardo was running from a fight with his teammate. And today, we all know who ended up where. Verstappen is a two-time champion, and by looking at Red Bull's performance, he'll be a five-time champ soon. Ricciardo, however, did return to Red Bull, but as a reserve driver to his former teammate. But still, this crash was nothing compared to what Guan Yu Zhou had at the British Grand Prix. At the opening lap of the race, George Russell collided with the Alfa Romeo driver Guan Yu Zhou, which then sent the Chinese driver's car flying across the track, sliding on its halo before being sent over a concrete barrier and into the retaining wall. This crash was so severe, as Zhou was literally skidding while upside down for a considerable amount of time. But thankfully, Zhou was unharmed, owing it to the halo, and even confirmed on Twitter that the halo saved.
Like, this is what I'm talking about. Look at the accident he just experienced, and he's able to take a selfie the same day. Excuse me? How fast was he going? On the head top.
His life. The halo is just one of the numerous inventions that shows how much F1 has advanced in terms of safety and saved so many lives.
I would say the least.
But unfortunately, we can't say the same for Jules Bianchi. This young, talented driver, who was the first person ever to be in the Ferrari Drivers Academy, had his dream dashed when he crashed his car into a 6,500 kilogram crane, which was clearing German driver Adrian Suttel's car. Suttel's car had spun out of control and crashed in the same spot the lap earlier, and as a result, his car was still being cleared by the crane when Bianchi lost control of his car on the same curve and crashed into the crane at 78 miles per hour and ultimately lost his life. This tragic incident forced the FIA to implement the 4-hour rule, which requires that races held during the day must take place no less than 4 hours before sundown, along with modifications to track drainage and how emergency vehicles handle collisions. But even if these drivers' crashes created some positive rule changes, sometimes F1 drivers simply force the FIA to make a rule change. But this time, it's just for their benefit. One F1 driver forced a rule change just to gain an unfair advantage in the race. Another driver forced it, which was so bizarre that it even changed F1's future forever. But who are these drivers? And what changes did they enforce? But more importantly, why? I know you want to hear more about this, so just click the video right here.
Oh, it's done? I have a lot of respect for these guys because it's crazy. Like, today's athletes, when you're watching your favorite sport or your favorite team play, you're worried about injuries, right? You're worried about concussions and torn ACLs and torn Achilles. You're not really worried about watching your favorite athlete die while playing a sport. You know, whether it's football, soccer, basketball, cricket, rugby, you're not really expecting these people to die because they're not really risking their lives playing the sport. The reason I have so much respect for F1 drivers and at NASCAR drivers, it's, yo, bro, one mistake could be your life. That's what's crazy to me, bro. Like, can we not let that concept go over our heads? One mistake could be the difference between you walking out or you dying in a car. So I ultimately have a lot of respect for the risk that these men are taking for the notion of competition. Like, I'm not saying they want to die, but they're willing to take that risk. Because when you drive in hundreds of miles an hour and making sharp turns with other fast cars, you can almost make the argument that like crashes are inevitable. It's not to prevent crashes from happening. It's more so we know a crash is gonna happen. We just want these guys to survive. Okay, you guys got it, bro. F1, you guys got my respect. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Let me know your thoughts and your opinions in the comment section. And of course, Gabos reads all the comments, man. I'm gonna holler at you guys in the next video. Mamba out.